The dent on the top of my Cooler Master case was severe enough that I could not mount a fan on the top of the case, so I sent it back to Newegg for a refund. Instead of getting an identical Cooler Master case, I found this Thermaltake case on Amazon Prime, and I decided to give it a shot instead. So let's open this up before we build the PC. Like the Cooler Master case, the power supply will go on the bottom. I can install 2 more fans on the top, and I believe either 1 or 2 fans in the front. So that's good. Lots of cooling options there. Nothing's dented that I see. That's an improvement over the Cooler Master. We got some mounting screws, some wire ties, and an instruction book that I'm going to read before I install anything. On the bottom of the case, there's this filter that slides out, and that's going to be right where the power supply fan is. So that way I'm not getting a bunch of dust in my power supply. So let's go ahead and screw in the power supply. I need to peel off any kind of stickers or anything on the motherboard before I put it into the case. There's lots of room to work inside this case. Make sure all the cables are out of the way, and go ahead and drop the motherboard into the case before I install the processor and the RAM. I'm going to line up the screw holes. Make sure that I'm not squashing any cords, and I'm going to screw the motherboard down. I'm not going in very tight at first. Try to do the screws that are hardest to access first, then work the easier ones. I'm going to make sure all the screws are tightened down pretty good. You don't have to clamp them down like you're tightening a lug nut on a tire. It just needs to be secure. Next up, processor. This is an AMD Ryzen 5 2600X. I'm going to lift up this arm here. You can look at the corners of the socket to figure out the positioning on the processor. The square corner is here, and there's the square corner. So I'm going to set it down till the pins slip in, and that's correct. Now I can drop the arm and lock it in place. Time for the CPU cooler. This cooler does not use clips, it uses these screws. So I'm going to have to take this clip mount out. I'm going to save these and keep them with my spare hardware just in case I change coolers one of these days. Alright, the CPU fan header is right here. So I am going to position the pigtail where it's close to that CPU fan header. Decisions. I can still reach it from over here, and that way this is not getting in the way of my RAM. These go 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 2 sticks of RAM. I'm going to put them in 1 and 2, starting with 2. Make sure it's seated well. Alright, RAM is installed. Next up, my NVMe M.2 cards. The M.2 I boot from will go here underneath this heatsink. Let's start with this one. Okay, for this next one, I need some kind of spacer here. And I found this in the bag with the motherboard. So I need to put my standoff spacer right here for my M.2 drive. Then install my M.2 drive. Now I have to be very careful with this because it is tiny. And now that M.2 drive is installed. Alright, the main system fan hooks up right there, so I'm going to go ahead and hook it up. Before I go any further, I need to back up a few steps. This plate needs to be mounted on the inside, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the board out, mount that plate, and put the board back in. I'm going to make this screw hole near that plate the very first one that I screw in, just so that I can make sure everything lines up good. Well, let's plug the case fan back in. I'm going to install a heatsink on this M.2 drive. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for a heatsink on this M.2 drive, but I'm going to go ahead and peel the sticker off. I might stick some little bitty heatsinks on that individually. I'll need to find some little bitty heatsinks that work. This is an MSI GTX 1060 that I pulled out of my Dell computer. I'm going to be installing it on this computer. Time to get into the cabling that came with my power supply. I'm going to be hooking up my motherboard and my video card at this time. Here's the connection for the motherboard. The front panel has a lot of small things I'm going to have to hook up, so I'll do that right now. Might as well hook up the USB 3. Alright, moment of truth. CPU fan spinning, case fan is spinning. I got a LED light on the board. Looking good. Let's hook a monitor up to this thing. And it says that I need a boot device. Well, I haven't installed an OS yet, so yes, I need a boot device. Let's do a Control-Alt-Delete and explore the BIOS. It's seeing both of my NVMe drives, so that's good. I want to hook a mouse up to this. There's still some work to do before this thing is up and running. I haven't installed an OS yet. I plan to put in an optical drive. I'm going to put some more fans in the thing to keep it cool, but it's starting out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you to my patrons for supporting this channel. Your contribution helps keep ThriftyAV going, and remember, stay thrifty, everyone.